Greetings and welcome back to the show, World War II Books Where to Start. I'm Erwin Rommel, and I'm about to go to Germany to celebrate my wife's birthday tomorrow, June 6th, 1944. But first, I thought I'd talk to you guys here on the staff about some great books about D-Day. So we just passed the 80th anniversary of D-Day, and of course that's a big deal. The 5s and 10s are when it really gets media coverage, right? In between, year to year is just kind of mentioned as a little blurb, 30 seconds on the news. But we get the 5s and 10s, we got a lot of dramatic footage of the event. And of course, we get the gathering of the veterans who could still travel to the site, whether it's Pearl Harbor or Normandy or wherever, to mark the crucial anniversaries there. So it was a big to-do this year. It won't be next year. Just the way the news cycle runs, they only matter on the 5s and 10s. What are you going to do? Set piece of World War II. If there's 2 or 3 things you knew about the war in history class, the way I was taught in the 70s and 80s, it was Pearl Harbor, D-Day, bomb. That was the 3 things you're supposed to take away from it. But people don't really understand what D-Day is and what it means, what it accomplished. It's just a name, and sometimes a movie. But we're going to cover a little bit more in detail here. So we'll kick it off with the first one, man. This is the original, The Longest Day, Cornelius Ryan, 1959. Cornelius Ryan was a journalist, transformed into a book writer after the war. He only did 3, and he died, unfortunately, before his time. This is really, really succinct and to the point, really focused, laser sharp, and it's done pretty darn well. I like the little quirky stuff he gets to, like the crossword writer for Daily Telegraph was actually a couple of his crosswords before the invasion. It concerned Allied intelligence, British intelligence, because he was giving away code names for particular items or events or personnel or equipment or phases of the operation in his crosswords, and he got hauled in by Scotland Yard, MI5, whatever, and questioned pretty thoroughly about this. This was an older guy in his late 50s, early 60s. What he'd been doing Daily Telegraph crosswords for a long time. The British public loved it, but he was giving away stuff like Mulberry and Utah and whatnot in his crosswords over time, and they just happened to coincide with actual code names that we were using for D-Day. So he got questioned deeply about that, and it's in the photo section here that some of the crosswords are reproduced here. It's pretty cool. Of course, he had no idea. He was just coming up with different stuff for crosswords, man. He never repeated himself. That was one of his moments of pride, or points of pride, was that he never repeated a clue in any of his crosswords over span of 20 years or something crazy. But just one of the little comical, if you will, incidental moments of D-Day. So I really like that. And I love the code phrases the BBC were throwing out. It is hot in Suez. John has a long mustache for the French resistance stuff, where they're supposed to do their various tasks and alerting them to when the invasion is actually going to happen. I love that kind of stuff. Quirky as hell, the Brits, but it's good stuff. German intelligence, of course, had actually cottoned on to what the actual invasion date was. They had cracked somebody in the French resistance and got the actual date and the code phrases that were going to be used. It was a French poem, I believe, or a French novel. It was something that was going to be quoted over BBC, and that was going to be the indicator that the invasion is starting. And German intelligence had not so much credibility by this point in the war, so convincing their superiors in the army that this is actually it's real this time, and it's going to be Normandy, not Pas-de-Calais, was a tough go, and they really got nowhere with it. Fascinating little what if of history there, if they had actually been taken seriously and had been more prepared at Normandy, what might have happened. Kind of cool stuff. We get the Dutch Schultz story in the dice game, where he ran up like 10 grand and then had a vision of his mother, I think it was, that was praying over his dead body or lamenting her dead son, and she had sent him a rosary or something, and he decided to go back and lose everything he'd won. It's a famous story. And the lack of cliches here is amazing for 1959. He's a really clean writer. He only uses the old point blank range thing once, so it's pretty cliche free. I really enjoyed the front 2/3 of the book. I would say after the landings, after the first 24 hours, it kind of bogs down on trivial incidents here and there. He tries to cover all 5 beaches and all of the paratroopers, of course, and try to get an all-inclusive picture of what was going on. And from the German side of the hill too, he covers Rommel and the issues over command and control, the Panzer's release, what Hitler was doing, and the telephone conversations with Keitel and Jodl. Don't wake him up. Oh, he's already awake, but he'll make a decision when he gets around to it. That kind of stuff. Rommel's dilly-dallying with the resistance, and it says, "Oh yeah, if you happen to kill the Fuhrer, I'll be happy to take command of the army. But in the meantime, don't count me in for anything else. Let me know when it happens." He covers that, so it's a really good starting point for D-Day. It's really focused and down to earth, very direct writing, nothing wrong with it. And of course, it spawned a movie of the same name. I believe it was done a little bit later. I think it was 1966. I'm not quite sure. It's got a cast of stars, and I saw it once when I was a teen. I was really unthrilled with it because of one reason. That was John Wayne. He really turned me off, and I thought he was kind of ludicrous in that role. And I just watching him recently, I'd forgotten damn near everything about that movie except Pips Priller and John Wayne. And John Wayne, as Vanderhoot, I think it was the world's oldest paratrooper, and it doesn't fly for me to this day. I guess they had to cram him in there for star power, or maybe he was a producer on the film. I don't know, but they jam him in there, and he's just kind of sticking out there like, ugh, that doesn't work for me. But everything else about The Longest Day is done so well, including the pan shot from the Pips Priller perspective as he goes down the beach, strafing the troops that coming out of the water. Used U.S. Army troops to do the reenactment for the film. It's just a really sweet shot, and it's only like 30-45 seconds long, but man, it's fantastic. It gives you an idea of what the invasion looked like from overhead that day. That's pretty cool. It holds up excellently. And of course, you got the Sam Eric Lee stuff that's done really well, and you got the guy crashing into the greenhouse in the woman's garden, and she's freaking out going into town. There's an American in my garden, and at the middle of the night. Oh, good stuff. It's done really well, really well. So you got it's a nice 1-2 punch. Read the book, watch the movie, and you get a pretty clear idea right there. Is a good starting point. If you want to go on with more, well, we've got more, of course. Let's switch over to D-Day by Stephen Ambrose from '94, 583 pages. This is part one of a two-parter about the liberation of Europe. This is exactly what it says, D-Day itself. So this is a supersized version of this. But here we get more planning, a lot more background, command and control. The original plan, Cossack, I think it was the command staff responsible for the initial idea of how we invade Europe, and just coming up with brainstorming ideas of what are the forces needed, how do we get there, all the nitty gritty heavy lifting stuff you got to do in the background for logistics to come up with the bare bones of an operational plan. And then Monty comes in and says, well, 3 divisions ain't going to cut it, we need 5. And that's his primary contribution to D-Day, and it was a very smart idea. You got to give credit to Monty for that, if nothing else, and I rarely do. Give him credit for the vision there. See, that 3 divisions just ain't enough, man. We got to get 5, or we're never going to carry this off. So that's all done very well. Photo section's fine. The issue with Stephen Ambrose is it's Stephen Ambrose, and he's known as a bit of a homer, or a lot bit of a homer, when it comes to America's contribution to the war and how we kind of won this single-handedly. Thanks for everybody else for coming along. So I didn't reread the full version of this for this video. I listened to the abridged version, which is only 6 hours long, and abridged versions are really problematic. Of course, it's pick and choose, and Ambrose was doing the narration, so he personally picked and chose what he was going to present here in an abridged version, and it's all America all the time. It's very chauvinistic in regards to other nations' contributions to the war effort and to D-Day in particular. That particular snippet comes off as very, very Uncle Sam, and Uncle Sam only. So I don't recommend that. I recommend, even if you don't want to know that much about D-Day, it's still worth going the whole hog here to get a broader picture. I read so long ago, I don't really remember. I hope it's more broad-minded than the abridged version is, but the abridged version shows a very, very lopsided view of the D-Day effort. So it's kind of sticking out like bit of an eyesore there. Is it worth? So yeah, it's probably worth reading. He's got good flow. He does, and he's going to cover all the stuff. He's kind of in love with the paratroopers more than anything else, and so that's done very, very detailed. So there's that. I mean, it's fine, I guess. I think I don't want to recommend it too highly. I can't having the problem with the abridged version, and of course, if the perfect companion to this is going to be Saving Private Ryan. I'm sure just about everybody who's watched this channel has seen Saving Private Ryan. If you haven't, you've been hiding under a rock for a long, long time. And the other thing to go along with that is Band of Brothers. It's 20 times better than Private Ryan to me. Of course, Band of Brothers goes all the way from D-Day to the end of the war, but the first 4 or 5 episodes are right in the Normandy section. So you get front loaded there. You get the whole idea what the paratroopers were all about. D-Day by Antony Beevor from 2009, 523 pages. And this is where we're going to get far better comprehensive coverage of the operation. And the intro is just smooth as glass. He does really well just easing you into the idea of what we're doing, what we're trying to accomplish, and what it means. Very, very well done intro. From there on, boom, you're into it. It'll carry you through the rest of the book. He's a really good writer. He's really polished here and really at the top of his form. So just a couple things that stick out to me. Jim Gavin. I don't know if I ever remember this, but he had a couple of names, Jumpin' Jim Gavin and Slim Jim Gavin. I just don't know if I'd ever heard that before. It's kind of silly. But you got pretty much a lot of the same stories as in The Longest Day for the initial assault, but it's smoother writing. And it moves along faster because of the larger focus of Beevor's book, because he's going to go and bookend it with the occupation of Paris, of course. It's the traditional ending, is to go to Paris, and a big hullabaloo and Charles de Gaulle. More on that in a minute. There's no section here about the German intelligence thing getting their clues from the BBC broadcast, so he doesn't cover that like Cornelius Ryan does. It's just not here. So there's a difference between the two books. Takes a lot of shots at Monty, and the first one's taken about the bombing of Caen and his unrealistic expectation to get to Caen on day 1. He said that was never a feasible thing at all, and there was no reason for Monty to brag about it, that he could do it. It was just simply logistically not going to happen. But then carpet bombing Caen was about as close to rock bottom stupid as you could get, and he lambasts him for that. Why give the Germans a great defensive position with rubble and a town you need for the road net? How dumb are you? And of course, Monty gets locked up with 3 or 4 Panzer divisions there and doesn't move for a month. It's one of the biggest issues in Normandy. And Beevor does not hold back. He's going to slam Monty pretty hard about it. Something I didn't know about was the Americans' suspicion of French civilians when they landed. They were scared they were actually cooperating with the Germans and everybody was a collaborator. And there were a lot of shootings of French civilians in the first couple weeks there as we get the Toehold Normandy expanded beachhead, which I didn't know before reading this book. It's like, that's kind of wild there. They would somehow, the mentality was with the Americans that the French must be working side by side with the Germans. They wouldn't tolerate this occupation for this long. It's just kind of a weird mindset. But that paranoia being just a lonely little beachhead with 5 or 6 or 10 divisions as we crowd more men in there, but we're facing the whole continent up to Berlin by ourselves, and we're suspicious of everything that moves. I guess that kind of paranoia leads to those situations. Kind of wild there. Not a good look for America, but something overlooked in the training there about how you treat civilians in war. Just something I didn't know about it. Allied air dominance meant that, of course, Germany couldn't bring up their panzers without getting slaughtered on the roads. They had to move them at night if they wanted to move them at all. And Rommel came up with a genius system to use the canals in France rather than roadways, because roadways and railroads were smashed by the air plan the Allies came up with to deny them access to getting reinforcements to the front. So that's kind of covered there. The stress of no, hold on. Yeah, he mentions SLA Marshall's famous or infamous study about infantrymen not firing their weapons. He kind of debunks that, or tries to debunk it. It's still got some credibility in academic circles, and I don't know why. The contention was SLA Marshall canvassed a bunch of infantrymen, surveyed, I think, after the war. Did you fire your weapon in combat? And according to Marshall, I think it was like 80% said they never fired a weapon. That smacks of ridiculousness. And Marshall was not an outside anti-war peacenik. He was a military officer, so there's no angle for him to slant the statistics that way. But it just seems improbable to me that this would be a true ism. Now, if you get rear S troops and supply guys, and you're giving them the survey, well, yeah, they might have had a 45, but they wouldn't have no occasion to use it, or very little occasion to use it, right? But if you're talking to frontline infantrymen who were in combat for a couple of months or all the way to the end of the war, they would have had to. And I could see like a couple of guys who were in the headquarters company may not have, if they're shuffling paperwork, but otherwise, I don't know where that's coming from. And he talks about it here in good enough detail. There's this guy named General Gerhardt. I don't think he's a big part of the D-Day operation, but it's not a name too familiar to me. American guy, but he comes across as a real hard ass like Patton with the spit and polish and the martinet kind of routine, so he kind of sticks out. I don't remember ever having run across him before. We got to cover Patton and his ego. We got Bradley is presented as solid and no nonsense at this point. His issue is that Monty start in Normandy and mount up to a raging hatred and jealousy and insecurity about Monty later on, but right here in Normandy right now still got cooperation and we're on the same page and everything's going smooth. You got Hitler and his map fantasies, which is a phrase I really like. You got a whole chapter on July 20, the assassination attempt at Hitler, which is a nice break in the action because it does get kind of grindy and kind of samey from chapter to chapter as we're going through the breakout in Normandy. It's a good shifting gears and kind of a necessary step back from the non-stop combat, which can be very samey over and over again. Very smart choice there, and it's a really, despite the triteness of the July 20th attempt and how often it's been covered, he managed to write it not necessarily with a fresh perspective, but you get through it pretty breezily, I think. Hemingway, of course, Hemingway pops up. Beaver's got a real thing for Hemingway, real thing for him as comic relief. More so in the Ardennes book than this, but he pops up here as, you know, he's a war correspondent. He got carte blanche to wander wherever he wants. He's carrying a weapon, which is contrary to journalist rules in the war because he's actually a non-combatant. But Hemingway is Hemingway, and he's, you know, the original alpha male, right? And so he's presented here as comic relief, especially in Paris, where he's trying to interrogate a German guy, and we're going to put the matches to your feet, and we'll get you to tell us the truth, and you're going to talk, kid. It's pretty ludicrous. Hemingway does not come across as a literary genius, shall we say. He comes across as a complete fool. Beevor is relentless about him, but yeah, you kind of need that too. I mean, it happened. It's real. Everybody, it's well documented. Everybody who's there with him was going to swear to that story actually happened that way. So, Paris Liberation is pretty dull stuff, and I feel he feels obligated to cover it in more pages than is probably necessary. Yeah, there was some combat in the suburbs and whatnot here. There were some, 1,000 KIA Germans, I believe, overall. But it's really about as a non-event as you can get in the Normandy campaign, because the Germans were not going to defend the city. The command and control structure had broken down. The commandant of Paris just didn't care. He wanted to surrender and get his ass over to the U.S. and get out of the Hitler system. So he was doing everything he could to not get shot by Gestapo, but make it look good enough for Hitler so he wasn't shot. So that's a bit of a letdown at the end because the liberation of Paris just doesn't matter to me. It was a big showpiece for the film, for the cameramen, and the newsreels. But liberating capitals was not necessarily winning the war. It really wasn't, and it's just used as a chop point for the end of the Normandy campaign. It's just kind of a convenient bookend. It doesn't really mean anything, except to de Gaulle, right? That's the whole point of Normandy to him. We could care less about anything going on in a wider war. I don't give a damn about the Allies. I don't give a damn about Germans. I want France back, and Paris is my symbol. So it matters. It matters to de Gaulle. He even he does the walk down the Champs-Élysées. I can't say it. The main boulevard of Paris to Napoleon's tomb, and he goes to the Cathedral Notre Dame to be sanctified by the priest to signify France is liberated and I am her rightful ruler. He does the old symbolic, ancient medieval stuff, getting blessed by the church means officially official. I am the legitimate ruler of France. Classic de Gaulle hubris. And that guy, what a clown. So Beevor is pretty good. I won't quite give it 5 stars. I think it's 4 stars. It kind of misses the mark for a 5-star thing for me, but it's very good, very good. And we'll top it off today with 6 Armies in Normandy by John Keegan from 1982. I don't have a copy of this. It's 365 pages long, and John Keegan is going to take the intellectual side, the college lecturing side of Normandy. He's not really a World War II historian per se. He's kind of a military historian, and he really does get kind of philosophical at some points in this book about the process of war and by nationality. That's the whole thing. 6 Armies in Normandy is going to cover all the nationalities and their particular traits as he sees them as being truisms for how they carried out combat and fighting and how they wanted to win the war. Long intro about being a boy in England in 44 and the presence of so many Allied soldiers everywhere you went. There they were. You couldn't get away from them. Listening to the BBC broadcast and dreaming about Spitfires and just being a boy in the country, and this was the way you lived. The war was your world, and then one day all the soldiers disappeared, and the emptiness of the countryside suddenly, and great things were happening. He was a little bit confused about it. But he remembers it as just kind of the image of his childhood. So that's the intro, and it's really long-winded and really elegantly told. And from there, we're going to go not point by point historical. This happened at 7:01 a.m. This happened at 7:05 a.m. We're going to hopscotch around the Normandy front, give you snips of this and snips of that as particular set pieces of what happened in Normandy. Paratroopers, panzers, Hitler and decision to release panzers, hopscotching around, but we're going to cover national characteristics: the Poles, French, Brits, Germans, Americans. I'm missing somebody. Can't think of who it is. Maybe Dutch. Not quite sure. But it adds up to a very elegant piece overall. There are some dull sections as he blabbers on a little bit too long about stuff, and sometimes he wanders into some thickets of meandering that I'd like him to get out of and get back to the point. There's a long section on Allied armor, and a little bit too waxing fondly about the Sherman tank and its virtues versus its vices. I don't know where that love affair came from with the Sherman. He does cover Michael Wittmann and his rampage through Village Bocage pretty well. Section on July 20, just like Beevor did, he steps back to cover July 20. It's going to do it in a slightly more caustic British way. But a little detail I picked up here I hadn't heard before. Hitler had over 100 splinters of steel and wood removed from his body that day. Didn't know that. Pretty cool. Let's see. Von Kluge and his struggles to remain on the right side of Hitler and tell him to the cause is hopeless, and no, I really wasn't involved in the plot to kill you. I swear I wasn't. It doesn't matter. I'm going to get arrested anyway. Oops, I got to kill myself. So that's covered. Yeah, but there's a long end piece about the significance of Normandy versus Stalingrad versus the end of North Africa versus Bagration, and its relative worth in contributing to the final endpoint of victory. Who should claim victory as theirs for national prestige? But to me, this section points up the collaborative team effort that World War II was and had to be in order to defeat Nazi Germany. There was no one side that could claim they did it all, even though it's still a thing today to claim USA did it or Britain did it or the Soviets did it. But no, it really was a team effort. That's the whole point of being allied, right? So this kind of section points up that very well, I think, inadvertently, and I don't think he was trying to aim for that, but that's what I got out of it. So that's Six Armies in Normandy by John Keegan. Kind of a more laid-back, erudite approach to Normandy rather than rivet counting or popular military history. So it's got a different feel to it, really does. And it's got that 1980s style writing. You can tell it's kind of an older title. It's got the title. It's got that 1980s feel to it. And I think maybe a bit of Cold War effect comes in. There's maybe a bit of feel of that in there, here and there. But worthwhile overall. I wouldn't give this a 5-star either. Probably 3.5, somewhere there. Good stuff. That'll wrap it up for today and my attempt at D-Day. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you found one of these you'd like to read and maybe a movie you'd like to watch. And until next time, I am Erwin Rommel. I hope Lucy likes the shoes I bought for her. They were really pricey. Until next time, I'll see you.